In January of 2025, I had one of my best months in business, just under $15,000 in commissions from a business that I had been slowly building on the side of my personal training practice for a couple of years now. And I remember the feeling of seeing that number, and it wasn't a feeling of excitement. It was more like relief, like, okay, this is real. This actually works. And, I used a portion of that money to help keep my mother's caretaker on full time. And I also added two additional caretakers part time. And, my mom was living with us since I moved her from Jamaica back in January of 2017. And she was a Holocaust child survivor. She was 87 years old. And in her final months, she needed full round the clock care. And I just couldn't provide that alone while running a gym and also building an online business. And that January income made it possible for me to say yes to the level of help that she deserved without having to choose between her dignity and paying my bills. And she passed away on April 8th, 2025. And today, as I'm filming this on the 1 year day of her passing, I debated whether to film this episode today, and but it kept coming back to me, the same thought, and that she would want me to, and she would want me to show up and tell the truth and keep building. So that's what I'm doing. So the morning after she passed, I got up, I made tea, I took my supplements, I went out to the gym, and I coached my clients. I told myself that routine was the right medicine, and that if I just kept moving, that meant I was strong and I was going to get through this. That lasted for about 4 days. And then the Sunday night, which is the night before my new week starts, I sent a message to my clients, and I had canceled everything for a week, and then I canceled for another week. I just found myself not wanting to be around anyone really, mostly because I had nothing of value to say, and crying was the only thing that I could do, and I could do that uncontrollably. The only thing that I could do that first week was I hired my mother's caretaker to stay on for one more week, and not for care for me, right? But to go room by room and completely declutter my house. I hadn't realized how much I had neglected taking care of my house because I was so consumed with taking care of my mom and my business and my children and everything else except for my environment. And because every single thing that I looked at reminded me of her, and I couldn't breathe inside my own home. The first thing that went out was her favorite chair in the living room. I just couldn't bear to look at it. I filled the living room with new furniture because I needed the space to feel different. If I was going to survive in it, I needed it to change, right? And some people might not understand that. And I'm not here to really explain that. Grief does what grief does. And you do what you have to do to keep standing. And everyone has their own way of dealing. So after I did that, I also did 6 trips in 6 months. Some of them were, 10 days. I needed to be out of the home. My kids were grown. Atul was incredibly patient with me. And being in Los Angeles, in the house all day alone and quiet, was just too much. So I left repeatedly. And I spent on travel, and I spent on clothes and the things that made me feel something other than what I was feeling. And my spending was outgrowing my earning at a speed that I wasn't close enough, I wasn't really paying much attention to. I'm sharing all of this because I think a lot of us do this absolutely. And we don't talk about it honestly in a business context. Grief is treated like something you're to process privately and then you come out of it. But a business doesn't pause for your processing, your pause for your clients or your mortgage. And if your income depends entirely on your physical presence, your energy and your emotional availability, then the truth is you're only one hard season away from a serious problem. I found that out the hard way. I need to be clear here that grief isn't the only thing that stops you, because before April 2025, I already lived this problem in similar doses, and somehow I kept convincing myself it was fine. I've had a severe ankle sprain that had me hopping around the gym, still trying to coach because canceling meant not getting paid. I've had a dislocated rotator cuff, which, if you've ever had one of those, is excruciating. I coached through it. I had COVID and I was out of the gym for 2 full weeks, 2 weeks with zero income because I physically couldn't be there. How about the abscess that I had that took me to the ER 3 times? I was out for a week and then coaching in pain for weeks after. And then most recently, I had a serious neck injury that I coached through for an entire month wearing a neck brace and in pain every single morning because my clients needed me and my bills needed me. And I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, really. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, right? So, ankle, shoulder, COVID, ER, and in between all of that, the slow accumulation of build of a burnout that comes from being on for other people every single morning, regardless of how you're feeling, from what happened the night before or how your body is going through whatever is going on now. This is the reality of income that requires your physical presence. You can love what you do with your whole heart. And I genuinely love these women and being with them daily. And it's still not a sustainable long term model. I've heard it said, and I think it's so true, that your body eventually tells you what your bank account hasn't yet. And that cannot be the only engine this thing is going to run on forever. I'm 52. I'm strong and for the most part healthy, and I work hard to stay that way and try to get better at it every day. I'm also honest enough to with myself to know the version of the income that I've built in my gym is not the version that I want to be dependent on when I'm 60 or 65, or when the next injury happens, or when life, throws something at me and takes me out completely. Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about January 2025. That income didn't require me to set an alarm. It didn't require me to show up somewhere in a good mood, or and hold space for someone else's fitness goals while I was quietly managing my own life. It was built on a system that I had put in place over time that could keep moving even when I couldn't. When I needed to spend on my mother's care, it was there. When I needed to get on a plane 6 times in 6 months because I couldn't be in my own living room, it helped make that possible. It wasn't enough to cover everything because I also stopped actively building it during my grief, but it was there. It kept moving. It was in the background while I was falling apart in the foreground. And that is the entire argument for why I do what I do on the side of my physical gym business. Not the lifestyle or the travel photos, right? But it's this reality that life will always eventually ask more of you than you budgeted for. And when it does, the question isn't whether you can emotionally handle it, because you absolutely can. You're stronger than you think that you are. The question really is whether your income can handle it too. And I'm building something that I can answer yes to that question. And I'm being honest with you about exactly where I am in that build, because I think you deserve a real conversation and not a highlighted reel. So today is April 8th, 2026, 1 year since my mother left. And I'm sitting here in a studio I built in her room because I needed to turn this space that was breaking my heart into something that could carry her legacy forward. She was a builder. She was an architect. She was a woman who created things that outlasted her, and I am my mother's daughter, and I intend to do the same thing. I almost didn't film this today. I sat with my tea this morning. I didn't sleep very well last night. It's still dark outside. And I've genuinely asked myself if I was ready to do this. And then I thought about her, and I thought about every person watching this who might be in the middle of their own hard place right now, trying to figure out how to keep a business alive while they're also trying to keep themselves together. And she would want me to show up. She would want me to tell the truth. So here I am. And I'm just speaking from my heart. I want to leave you with this. If everything stopped tomorrow, your health, your energy, your ability to physically walk out that door and be present for the people who depend on you, how long could what you've built keep going without you? That answer is going to tell you everything about what to build next. I'll see you next Thursday for more Talks with Tal. Bye for now.